In this lecture, I want to show you a few key examples just as a way for you to get an understanding on how to enter a market. This is an extremely important topic because for any company that is starting up, you need to understand the context where you're going to be operating, just because this is going to influence the way your company is going to be structured in the first place. So in this example here, we're going to look at a few kinds of markets that will help us understand how to enter for each of them. To get started, really, a context is important, as you can understand, because it's going to change the way we're going to structure our company from a few standpoints. When we're entering a market, depending on how the market is going to look like, we're going to structure our company in different ways in terms of how the sales or marketing organization is going to be structured, what kind of finance we need, and really based on the market, everything else related to the kind of product, how we can scale this up, is going to really influence our overall business strategy. To just recap in a minute and then move forward, really a key element when you're building a company from scratch and you're trying to enter a market is your, for instance, organization is going to look different depending on the kind of product and market you are encountering. For instance, if you know that you need to launch a product to enter a market, and in order for you to enter that market, you need to really have a sort of strategy where you offer a high priced product. Of course, you know that your organization needs to be structured more on the sales side. So you're going to need to put, of course, emphasis on marketing, but then you're going to also need to structure your sales team in a way that is going to be able to tackle the market. If you're building up, for instance, a product which is new in a market which is new, something that, is not yet known by customers, there is not even a defined customer base, you're going to need capital. And capital is not going to come in the form of revenues from customers because, again, there is not yet a customer defined. It's going to come most probably as a venture capital or as financing or any money which can come with the equity. So it's not going to be capital coming from revenues. So again, understanding those sort of things is going to help us really make sure that we can get started in a more effective way. Let's think right now of four main types of markets. We have existing markets where really a market is defined, competitors are defined. So it's a market that, it's already there, it's already accessible, customers already know that sort of product, and we're going to launch a similar product, even though, it might be 2 or 3x better, we're launching a similar product in a market which already exists. Another scenario is that of a so-called resegmented market, which is an example used by the Professor Steve Blank. And here, a resegmented market is a market which is dominated by one or a few players. Then there is a whole new market, which is a market where really there is no definition of customer, the product is not even clear, and the kind of problem that you're addressing is not even clear to you as well yet. And then there is a clone market, which is more a market where it has worked, for instance, anywhere else, or in a context, and you want to apply it in another context or in another geographical area. So taking into account those specific contexts, we can say that, for instance, if you're trying to enter a specific market, in some ways, depending on whether the market is crowded or not, you may want to bootstrap and niche down. In order for you to enter the market, unless you're trying to really grab a high market share right away, really one of the most effective ways is really to bootstrap the company by finding a niche or the smallest viable audience that is going to help you kick off the operations and have revenues to growing the company, or at least the first revenues that will show that the idea in that market is still viable, and then you can, for instance, get capital for growth. Another example is about resegmented markets. As we said, these are markets where, there is one or a few players which are dominating the market. So here it's very important that you find the value gap. So you try to understand, okay, the dominant players that exist in this space, what's that they cannot do, for instance, because this would go against their own business model. So what can I do that they cannot do, because again, this would be something that they cannot offer to the existing customer base. One example that I like a lot is the example of DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine that prioritizes on privacy, where Google business model is built upon collecting data that then is served in many ways as free products and then as advertising on Google. and within Google products, then DuckDuckGo really, the value gap is offering something that Google can't, because if it would offer a private navigation, then the whole business model of Google would be killed, at least like the business model which is the most important right now, which is that of the search engine. Now, another example is about, the new market. So how do you behave in a new market? Here, really, what you want to do is you want to find a commercial use case in the first place. So you want to define the problem for customers. What is that they are ready to buy your product for? And once you have done it, you're gonna be ready to commercialize it and then get revenues to grow the company. But until then, you're gonna really need resources to find this new commercial use case. So unless you have another bootstrapped company or another company that gives you the revenues to get started with this new company in a new market, then you might need venture capital money or financing or anything else. I mean, you're going to need external capital that is going to help you out in growing this kind of business. A last example that I want to show you here, it's about the clone market. Think of the case of a company, for instance, a search engine that sees that, for instance, Google has been working in the US, is going to do the same in China. One example is Baidu. Of course, Baidu has its own specifics, is a evolved search engine, has many things that, for instance, Google might not have. Yet, when Baidu implemented its strategy, it did that after Google in the US. So they really applied the same concept in China. So in a new market, they really, cloned in a way the concept, the business model, and applied these in China. So those are the different market contexts, how we can apply and how we can entry, with a company in each of those. And those are some examples because, again, it's very important to understand that based on the context, it's going to change the whole organization, finance, and the way you're going to structure your team to reach the goals.